asked earlier in the first segment about women visiting the graveyard. When the Prophet ﷺ prohibited everybody from visiting the graveyard, that was for a reason. In the beginning, he banned visiting the graveyard except for the burial. So just go to bury our dead. Then after a while, the Prophet ﷺ said in the sound hadith that I have indeed prohibited you from visiting the graveyard. أَلَا فَزُورُوهَا. Now you may visit the graveyard. And he gave the effective cause of the permissibility after the prohibition. He said, أَلَا فَزُورُوهَا فَإِنَّهَا تُذَكِّرُكُمْ بِالْمَوْتِ. Because visiting the graveyard would remind you of death. And the reminder of death is very essential in maintaining our steadfastness on the straight path. Because when one remembers that soon he will join those who died. How soon? It could be right now, it could be in years. So since we don't know, we have to be ready. We have to be on a standby. We have to be always righteous. We have to renew our tawbah and our covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the purpose of the permissibility. Why am I saying this entire story? Because this effective cause of the permissibility is effective in the right of men and women. If men need to be reminded about death, women too. Or only men get to die? Men and women need to be reminded about death. Why some of the scholars said no, the original prohibition is still effective with regards to women, and women will not be allowed to visit the graveyard at all, because they relied on ahadith which were stated originally at the same area, at the same era or time where the Prophet ﷺ prohibited visiting the graveyard generally for both men and women. When he said, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ زَوَّارَاتِ الْقُبُورِ, may Allah curse women who visit the graveyard regularly. So the scholars have two different opinions. One which says the restriction of visiting the graveyard for women is still effective, and another one said when the Prophet ﷺ left that restriction, it was left for both men and women. I believe, and Allah knows best, and according to my shuyukh and my scholars, that the restriction is left for both men and women. If a woman happens to go to the graveyard for this intention, in order to be reminded with shortness of this life, in order to visit her beloved one who died with the proper etiquette, with the proper adab, and without committing any violation such as screaming, yelling, objecting to Allah's decree, or mourning the death of somebody who died for so long, we see that. Last Eid, after I prayed Eid, I was given the khutbah in the open. And on the way back, I saw many people, the villagers particularly, going in flocks and in groups, going to the graveyard, and some coming out of the graveyard. I inquired about it, and they said this is a tradition. That right after we pray Eid, everybody, the whole village, have to go to the graveyard. Who made the tradition? The Eid day, the day of joy and delight, the day of happiness. We begin that day by sadness and sorrow and grief. We go to the graveyard. This is absolutely rejected. Do not tell me that my family will get upset with me, because Allah will be upset with you when you invent something like that. So when the sisters or the brothers go to the graveyard with this intention, I'm going to be reminded, I'm going to receive this admonition. She goes wearing the proper hijab during the day, not at night. Go with a mahram, because this is a deserted area in most cases, and say assalamu alaikum ahla diyari min al-mu'minina wal-muslimin wa inna insha'Allahu bikum lahiqun nas'alullah lana wa lakum al-afiyah, the prescribed dua, and you step out, no problem. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. And please remember, I mentioned that there is a khilaf or different opinions in this regard. But as far as following the funeral is entirely restricted for women, because they have less patience and they may lose their patience and say a word or a statement of objection to Allah's decree which may ruin them.